Thus the night slowly settles in, and everything becomes calm and quiet. It's the perfect moment to listen to a fairy tale, a story that has been softly told from one generation to the next. Tonight, we will be together to hear a timeless tale, one that speaks of slumber and dreams, of curses and true love woven into the very fabric of old castles and enchanted forests. Close your eyes, if you like, and imagine the quiet grandeur of ancient kingdoms, where magic breathed in every rustling leaf and echoed in every stone of a forgotten castle. But before the story truly begins, you should get comfortable. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. So make yourself comfortable, let the outside world fade away, and let tonight's story begin. Settle in, relax, and allow the quiet magic of the tale to carry you through the night. Once upon a time, nestled deep within a land of rolling hills and whispering woods, stood a magnificent kingdom, ruled by a king and queen, whose hearts were pure and kind. Their subjects loved them dearly, and their days were filled with prosperity and peace. Yet, for all their blessings, a quiet sorrow often settled over the royal couple. Their grand castle, with its towering turrets and echoing halls, felt incomplete, for they longed for a child, a little one to fill their lives with the laughter and joy that only a baby can bring. They wished and they prayed, year after long year, watching the seasons turn from the fresh green of spring to the crisp whites of winter, always holding on to the hope that one day their wish would be granted. And then, as if woven from the very fabric of their deepest dreams, a miracle occurred. The queen, to the astonishment and overwhelming delight of the entire kingdom, was blessed with a child. It was a girl, a tiny princess, born with skin as soft as rose petals, eyes like morning glories, and hair the color of spun gold. The castle, once quiet with the gentle murmur of royal duties, now hummed with a different kind of energy, a vibrant buzz of happiness. The king and queen were overcome with a joy so profound it brought tears to their eyes, and they vowed to cherish this precious gift above all else. The entire kingdom rejoiced. Bells chimed from every steeple, and celebrations were held for weeks on end, marking the arrival of their beloved little princess, whom they named Aurora, for she was as radiant as the dawn. To commemorate this glorious event, the king and queen decided to host the most magnificent christening feast the kingdom had ever seen. Invitations were sent to all the noble families, the powerful lords, and most importantly, to the wisest and most esteemed fairies from across the land. There were 7 such fairies, each renowned for her benevolent magic and generous spirit. They arrived in shimmering gowns, their presence filling the great hall with a gentle, sparkling light and the sweet scent of enchanted flowers. The hall itself was a sight to behold, adorned with garlands of fresh blooms, banners woven with gold thread, and tables laden with delicacies fit for royalty and magical beings alike. Laughter and music filled the air, a joyous symphony of celebration. As the feast progressed, one by one, the 7 good fairies approached the cradle where the tiny Princess Aurora slept peacefully, her little chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Each fairy, with a wave of her wand and a whispered incantation, bestowed a magical gift upon the infant. The first fairy, with eyes like clear pools, blessed her with unparalleled beauty, so that she would be admired by all who saw her. The second, with graceful hands, granted her an exquisite grace, ensuring that her every movement would be as fluid as a dancer's. The third, with a serene smile, blessed her with a melodious voice, destined to sing like the nightingale. The fourth, with thoughtful eyes, gave her the gift of boundless wisdom, so she would always know truth and kindness. The fifth, with a gentle touch, imbued her with a nature of pure kindness, making her beloved by all creatures, great and small. And the sixth, with a sparkle in her gaze, blessed her with musical talent, so she could play any instrument with effortless skill. 6 magnificent gifts, each a promise of a bright and glorious future for the little princess, had been bestowed. The air crackled with benevolent magic, and the parents' hearts swelled with gratitude. But just as the 7th good fairy, whose gift was yet to be given, stepped forward, ready to offer her blessing, a sudden, chilling gust of wind swept through the grand hall. The magnificent tapestries swayed violently, the flickering candlelight danced erratically, and the joyous music abruptly ceased, replaced by an unnerving silence. All eyes turned to the grand entrance, where a figure emerged, shrouded in a dark, formidable cloak. It was the wicked fairy Maleficent, whom everyone had believed to be long forgotten, or perhaps simply dared not invite due to her notorious temper and dark powers. Her face was gaunt and severe, her eyes burning with an icy malevolence, and she leaned heavily on a twisted staff, its tip gleaming with an ominous light. A hush fell over the assembled court, so complete that one could hear the frantic beat of their own hearts. The king and queen, their faces paling, trembled with a mixture of fear and regret. They had indeed forgotten Maleficent, or perhaps, in their joy, had hoped her absence would go unnoticed. Maleficent, her voice like grinding stones, addressed them. "So, king and queen, you have forgotten me, have you? Forgotten to invite me to this joyous occasion, this grand christening?" Her words were laced with bitter sarcasm, and her gaze, full of venom, swept over the good fairies, then finally settled on the innocent, sleeping princess. The joy that had filled the hall moments before evaporated, replaced by a suffocating dread. "I, too, shall bestow a gift upon your daughter," Maleficent declared, her voice rising to a menacing crescendo. "A gift she shall never forget." With a furious sweep of her staff, she pointed a gnarled finger at the cradle. "When she is 16 years of age, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel, and she shall die." The chilling words echoed through the silent hall, a pronouncement of doom that struck terror into every heart. The king cried out in despair, the queen collapsed into tears, and the good fairies recoiled, their faces etched with horror. Maleficent let out a cruel, cackling laugh, a sound that seemed to scrape against the very soul, before vanishing as abruptly as she had appeared, leaving behind only the lingering scent of sulphur and an oppressive pall of despair. The magnificent celebration had turned into a nightmare, the birth of their beloved Aurora, now forever tainted by a terrible, inescapable curse. A collective gasp of horror filled the grand hall, followed by the queen's heart-wrenching sobs. The king, his face ashen, clutched his beloved queen, their joyous celebration shattered by the malevolent decree. The good fairies, their bright countenances now clouded with sorrow and anger, murmured amongst themselves, their magic usually so potent against darkness, seemingly helpless against Maleficent's ancient power. The curse hung in the air like a poisoned cloud, a chilling promise of future despair for their precious Aurora. The beautiful gifts previously bestowed now felt fragile, overshadowed by the wicked fairy's declaration. How could unparalleled beauty or a melodious voice protect against such a dreadful fate? But then, a glimmer of hope, like a single star piercing a dark night, appeared. The 7th good fairy, the one whose turn it had been to offer her blessing just before Maleficent's terrifying arrival, stepped forward. Her name was Merryweather, and though she was the youngest of the fairies, her heart was filled with courage and compassion. She knew, with a heavy heart, that even her powerful magic could not entirely undo a curse as potent as Maleficent's. For the Dark Fairy's enchantments were ancient and deeply rooted, but she could alter it. She raised her slender, shimmering wand, and a soft, warm light enveloped the cradle, pushing back against the lingering chill of Maleficent's malevolence. Her voice, though soft, carried a conviction that quieted the distressed cries of the court. "Fear not, King and Queen," she began, her words a soothing balm to their frantic hearts. "I cannot lift the curse entirely, for Maleficent's power is indeed formidable. But I can soften it. Princess Aurora shall not die." A wave of relief so profound it brought tears to many eyes swept through the hall. Instead, Merryweather continued, her gaze fixed on the innocent sleeping babe. "When she pricks her finger on a spindle, she shall fall into a deep sleep. A sleep that will last not for a moment, but for 100 long years. A slumber so profound, it will be as if time itself has paused for her." The thought of 100 years was daunting, but it was infinitely better than the alternative. Then, with a gentle smile that promised hope, even in the face of such a long slumber, Merryweather added the most crucial part of her altered blessing. "And from this deep sleep she shall be awakened not by the passage of time, nor by the touch of a mortal hand, but by true love's kiss. A kiss from a noble prince whose heart is pure and true will break the enchantment and awaken her, and with her the entire kingdom, to a new dawn." Her words resonated with a quiet power, a promise of eventual salvation. The curse, though still a shadow, was now softened by the radiant light of hope and the promise of enduring love. The king and queen looked at each other, a fragile hope rekindled in their eyes. Their daughter would live, even if it meant a century of waiting. Despite this comforting alteration, the king's heart remained heavy with fear and worry. The image of his precious daughter pricking her finger, even to fall into a prolonged sleep, was unbearable. He loved Aurora more than life itself, and he vowed to do everything within his power to prevent even the modified curse from coming to pass. He spent restless nights pacing the castle halls, his brow furrowed in deep thought, searching for any possible way to shield his daughter from the impending doom. He consulted his wisest advisors, his most cunning strategists, and even the remaining good fairies desperate for a solution. Finally, a drastic, unprecedented decision was made. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, the king issued a royal decree, one that would echo throughout the entire kingdom and touch every household, from the humblest cottage to the grandest estate. His voice, usually calm and regal, was now tinged with a desperate plea as the heralds proclaimed his command. "By royal decree," they announced, their voices booming across market squares and village greens, every spinning wheel, every distaff, every single spindle in the entire kingdom shall be sought out, gathered, and utterly destroyed. No needle-sharp point, no turning wheel, no instrument capable of pricking a finger shall remain. The words were clear, the command absolute. The implementation of this decree was immediate and thorough. Royal guards, solemn-faced and determined, spread out across the length and breadth of the kingdom. They went from village to village, from town to town, knocking on every door explaining the grave importance of their mission. At first, there was confusion, even some resistance from those who relied on spinning for their livelihood. But when the full weight of the king's fear and the terrible curse became known, their understanding turned to solemn compliance. Women reluctantly brought forth their beloved spinning wheels, some heirlooms passed down through generations, their fingers lingering on the smooth wood before surrendering them. the whirring sound of flax and wool being turned into thread, a familiar hum in every home, fell silent across the land. Piles of spinning wheels, their once useful spindles, now menacing objects, were gathered in central squares. They were then systematically broken, chopped into splinters, and cast into roaring bonfires whose smoke curled ominously into the sky. The air, once filled with the gentle, rhythmic whir of countless wheels, grew quiet. The sight of these burning instruments was a stark reminder of the dark magic that threatened their beloved princess. It was a kingdom-wide act of collective fear and love, a desperate, valiant attempt to defy fate itself. The king believed that if there were no spindles left in his entire realm, then his precious Aurora could never prick her finger, and the curse, even in its softened form, would simply never come to pass. He hoped with all his heart that by removing the instrument of the curse, he could somehow erase its power completely. Back in the castle, the king and queen, though they found a measure of peace in their drastic actions, still watched over their daughter with a heightened sense of protection. Aurora grew into a lovely child, as the good fairies had promised, her beauty blossoming with each passing year, her laughter like tinkling bells, her heart pure and kind. She was shielded from the knowledge of the curse, living a childhood filled with joy and innocence within the protective walls of the castle. Every sharp object was kept far from her reach, every servant trained to be vigilant, every corner of the vast castle meticulously checked and rechecked. The king had taken every conceivable precaution, convinced that his diligence would surely safeguard his daughter from Maleficent's wicked prophecy. He clung to the hope that, within these secure walls, surrounded by love and vigilance, the curse would simply remain an unfulfilled, forgotten whisper from a dark day long past. Years passed, and Princess Aurora, growing under the watchful eyes of her parents and the lingering enchantment of the good fairies' blessings, blossomed into a truly exquisite young woman. Her beauty was, indeed, legendary, just as the first fairy had promised. Her long golden hair cascaded like spun sunlight, and her eyes, the color of cornflowers in a summer field, sparkled with an innocent joy. Her every movement possessed an innate grace, and her voice, when she hummed or sang softly to herself while strolling through the castle gardens, was as sweet and clear as a bird's melody at dawn. She was kind to every soul she met, a testament to the fifth fairy's gift, and moved through life with an endearing curiosity, always eager to learn and explore. The kingdom adored her, their love for her almost a physical shield against the whispers of that long-ago curse. As her 16th birthday approached, a date that had been etched into the king's memory with a mixture of dread and fervent hope, the entire castle was abuzz with preparations for a grand celebration. There would be feasts, dances, and tournaments, all designed to commemorate the day when their beloved princess would officially come of age. The king, despite his outward display of excitement, felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He had meticulously removed every single spindle from his kingdom, but a tiny, persistent worry gnawed at him. He knew Maleficent's malice ran deep, and even though Merryweather had altered the curse, the thought of his daughter falling into a deep sleep filled him with a profound sadness. He doubled the guard, ensuring that every nook and cranny of the castle was secured, reassuring himself that there was simply no way a spindle could possibly have survived his decree. On the morning of her 16th birthday, Aurora awoke with a joyful lightness in her heart. The sun streamed through her window, painting her chambers in hues of gold, and the sounds of celebratory music drifted up from the courtyards below. She spent the early hours of the day with her ladies-in-waiting, trying on beautiful gowns and admiring the exquisite jewels her parents had prepared for her. Yet, amidst the excitement and the flurry of preparations, a subtle sense of restlessness stirred within her. She had always been a girl who loved to explore, to wander the ancient winding corridors of the castle, imagining the lives of those who had walked there before her. She knew every garden path, every secret nook in the libraries, and every grand hall, or so she thought. As the afternoon began to wane, and with a few hours before the evening's grand festivities, Aurora found herself feeling a little overwhelmed by the constant attention and the endless fittings. She yearned for a moment of quiet solitude, a brief escape from the joyful chaos. Slipping away from her attendants with a playful wave, she decided to embark on a small, private adventure. She wandered through a less frequented wing of the castle, a place where the air felt a little cooler, the stone walls a little more shadowed, and the sounds of the celebration more distant. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished floors, a gentle rhythm in the quiet corridors. She ascended a narrow, spiraling staircase, one she hadn't remembered exploring before. The stone steps, worn smooth by centuries of forgotten feet, seemed to hum with old secrets. At the very top, tucked away behind a heavy velvet curtain that seemed to have been undisturbed for decades, she discovered a small, intricately carved wooden door. It looked ancient, far older than the other doors in the castle, and it seemed to hum with a faint, almost imperceptible energy. Her heart gave a little flutter of excitement. This was a place she had never seen, a true hidden gem. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a small, dusty chamber bathed in the soft, diffused light filtering through a high, grimy window. The air inside was still and heavy, carrying the faint, sweet scent of aged wood and forgotten linen. The room was sparsely furnished, dominated by what appeared to be a very old, peculiar contraption in the center. It was a spinning wheel, its large wooden wheel dark with age, its slender spindle sharp and inviting. Aurora had never seen such a device before. In all her 16 years, in all her lessons about the crafts of the kingdom, this object had never once been mentioned, nor had any of her teachers or tutors ever demonstrated its use. It was a relic from a forgotten past, a direct contradiction to everything her father had decreed. Beside the spinning wheel, an old woman sat hunched on a low stool. Her back was turned to Aurora, and her hands, gnarled with age, moved with a rhythmic, mesmerizing precision as she worked the spinning wheel. The gentle whir-thump of the wheel was the only sound in the silent room, a soft, hypnotic rhythm that seemed to draw Aurora deeper into the chamber. The old woman's face was deeply lined. Her eyes, though cloudy with age, held a strange, knowing glint as she looked up. It was Maleficent, of course, disguised by her powerful magic, patiently waiting for this very moment, for this very day. "Oh, hello," the old woman said, her voice surprisingly sweet, almost a lullaby, though tinged with an ancient wariness. "What a beautiful young lady you are. Come closer, my dear, and see what I am doing." Aurora, her curiosity overpowering any sense of caution, stepped further into the room. The air around the spinning wheel felt strangely warm, almost compelling. She watched, fascinated, as the old woman's fingers deftly manipulated the fibers, guiding them towards the sharp, glittering tip of the spindle. The rhythmic motion was captivating, and Aurora found herself drawn to the delicate, dangerous beauty of the spinning process. "What is this curious thing?" Aurora asked, her voice a soft whisper in the quiet room. "I have never seen its like before." The old woman chuckled softly, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "This, my dear, is a spinning wheel. With it, we turn humble wool into fine thread. Would you like to try? It is quite simple, really." She extended a hand, beckoning Aurora closer. A strange, irresistible urge compelled the princess forward. It was as if a gentle, invisible hand was guiding her. A subtle enchantment, blurring her senses, muffling the faint alarm bells that might have otherwise rung in her mind. Her eyes were fixed on the slender, tempting point of the spindle, which seemed to sparkle with an inner light calling to her. Aurora reached out a slender finger, her mind hazy with fascination, drawn by an irresistible force. Her fingertips, soft and unblemished, grazed the smooth, oiled wood of the spinning wheel, then, inexorably, moved towards the very tip of the spindle. The contact was feather-light, barely a touch, yet the sharp point pierced her skin. A tiny bead of crimson blood bloomed on her fingertip, a stark contrast against the pale skin. The moment the prick occurred, a wave of profound drowsiness, heavier than any fatigue she had ever known, washed over Aurora. Her eyelids, heavy as lead, fluttered, and then slowly closed. The image of the old woman, her face momentarily distorted by a triumphant, wicked grin, was the last thing she saw before the darkness enveloped her. A soft sigh escaped her lips as her body swayed, then gently collapsed, falling onto the dusty floor beside the silent spinning wheel. The curse, after 16 long years, had come to pass. Her sleep was immediate, deep, and utterly complete, ushering in the enchanted slumber that would ripple out from her, touching every corner of the magnificent castle and pausing time itself. The old woman, no longer needing her disguise, allowed the magic to fade, revealing the terrifying, triumphant face of Maleficent, her eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction before she vanished once more, leaving the silent princess in the dust-filled room. The moment Princess Aurora's finger pricked the sharp spindle, a profound, almost tangible wave of enchantment surged through the hidden chamber, expanding outwards with incredible speed. It wasn't just a physical drowsiness that overcame her. It was a magical lethargy, deep and ancient, reaching into the very core of her being. Her eyes, which just moments before had sparkled with curiosity, now fluttered, heavy as lead, and closed, her beautiful face settling into an expression of serene slumber. She crumpled softly to the floor, her golden hair fanning out around her like a halo, her breath slowing to an almost imperceptible whisper. The curse, long dreaded and tirelessly avoided, had finally found its mark, fulfilling Maleficent's dark promise. But the enchantment did not stop with Aurora. Just as Merryweather had modified the curse, this sleep was not confined to the princess alone. Like a silent, invisible tide, the wave of slumber washed through the entire castle, touching every living being within its ancient walls. In the grand ballroom, where preparations for the evening's festivities were in full swing, the musicians' instruments fell silent mid-note, their bows suspended in the air, their fingers frozen on the strings. The cooks in the bustling kitchens, painstakingly preparing the celebratory feast, paused, mid-stir, a ladle hovering over a bubbling pot, a baker's hand still kneading dough. The sentries on the battlements, ever vigilant, froze mid-stride, their spears glinting motionless in the afternoon sun. Even the castle dogs, curled by warm hearths, stopped their gentle snores, their tails unmoving. The stable boys in the courtyards, polishing bridles, were caught forever in their tasks, their cloths poised in mid-air. The king and queen, in their royal chambers, were exchanging loving words about their daughter's approaching birthday, when the wave of magic reached them. Their smiles faded, their eyes glazed over, and they slumped gently against each other, their embrace frozen in time. The entire court, the servants, the animals, every single living thing within the castle's stone perimeter, succumbed to the same deep, magical sleep. Their forms remained, perfectly preserved, breathing silently, their expressions fixed in whatever activity they had been engaged in. It was as if a cosmic photographer had taken a single eternal snapshot, freezing every soul, every movement, every fleeting moment within the castle walls. A profound silence descended upon the grand edifice. The vibrant sounds of courtly life, the clatter of plates, the murmur of conversations, the soft rustle of silk gowns, the distant laughter of children, all faded into an eerie stillness. The ticking of clocks ceased, their hands forever pointing to the exact moment the curse took hold. Dust motes, caught in sunbeams, hung suspended in the air. Time within the castle had simply stopped. The very air grew heavy, thick with untouched centuries, preserving every detail as though under a magical bell jar. Outside the castle, beyond the reach of the immediate enchantment, the three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, felt a sudden chilling tremor in their magical senses. A wave of profound sorrow washed over them, a deep knowing that Maleficent's curse had finally come to pass. With a shared glance of urgent concern, they instantly teleported themselves back to the castle, their hearts heavy with foreboding. They found Aurora first, lying peacefully in the dusty, hidden room, her beauty untouched by the long sleep already settling upon her. They knew, with a certainty that only ancient magic could provide, that she was merely sleeping, awaiting true love's kiss. Their hearts ached at the sight, but their grief quickly turned to fierce determination. They surveyed the silent, motionless castle, every figure frozen like a statue. While they could not break the sleep, they could ensure the safety of the princess and the entire kingdom until the prophecy of true love could be fulfilled. Flora, the fairy of flowers, proposed a plan. She will sleep for 100 years, she whispered, her voice tinged with sadness. The world outside will change, seasons will turn, empires will rise and fall. We must protect her, and all of them, from harm and from the prying eyes of the curious. Fauna, the fairy of forest creatures, nodded gravely. And when she awakens, she must not wake to a changed world, where her loved ones are long dead. They must awaken with her. Merryweather, whose magic had softened the curse, looked at her sisters with renewed resolve. Then we must ensure that when Aurora wakes, she does so to a world that feels familiar, a continuity of time for her and her people. They must not age. They must simply rest. And so, with a unified will and their combined benevolent magic, the three good fairies cast their most powerful protective spell over the entire castle and everyone within it. It was a spell that would ensure that no one inside would age. No dust would accumulate beyond what was already present at the moment of the curse. No cobwebs would truly thicken. The food would not spoil, the fabrics would not rot, and the colors would not fade. Everything would remain perfectly preserved, a tableau vivant of the very moment time ceased. The castle, for all intents and purposes, was now a perfect, silent monument to a sleeping dream. But more than mere preservation, the fairies knew they needed to create a visible, impenetrable barrier, a sign to the outside world that this was no ordinary castle, no ordinary slumber. With a solemn incantation and a powerful wave of their wands, they invoked the magic of the earth itself. From the very foundations of the castle, and extending outwards for miles in every direction, a thick, thorny forest began to grow with astonishing speed. It wasn't just any forest. It was a dense, impenetrable thicket of intertwining branches, sharp thorns, and tangled vines, each imbued with ancient magic. These thorns grew taller than any tree, stronger than any stone wall, twisting and spiraling upwards, forming an almost solid green barrier. The thorns wove themselves into a formidable wall, so dense and intertwined that no living creature, no human, could possibly pass through it without being shredded to pieces. They curled around the castle, embracing its walls, obscuring its towers, and swallowing its gates. Soon the magnificent castle was completely hidden from view, vanishing behind a seemingly endless wall of enchanted foliage. From a distance, It looked like nothing more than an impossibly vast, wild, thorny wilderness, a place to be avoided at all costs. This formidable natural barrier served two purposes: to protect the sleeping princess and her kingdom from any external harm or disturbance, and to send a clear, unmissable message to any who dared approach. Turn back, for this place is not for you. The kingdom outside the thorny hedge, though unaware of the exact nature of the enchantment, quickly learned to avoid the growing, mysterious forest. Whispers and legends would soon begin to weave themselves around the impenetrable thicket. Tales of a hidden, cursed castle, of a sleeping princess, and of a magic that defied time itself. The three good fairies, their task done, quietly departed, knowing that for 100 years their beloved Aurora and her entire world would be safe, waiting patiently for the fulfillment of Merryweather's final blessing, for the arrival of true love's kiss. The castle, now utterly silent, completely still and entirely hidden, began its long, long wait. And so, the vast, thorny forest, imbued with the ancient magic of the good fairies, grew and grew, rapidly engulfing the magnificent castle. Its branches twisted and interwove, forming a living, breathing, and utterly impenetrable wall of green. From a distance, where once the proud turrets and gleaming windows of the royal residence had stood, there was now only an endless expanse of dark, thorny wilderness, a place where no path could be seen, no light could penetrate. It was as if the earth itself had risen up to swallow the castle whole, erasing it from the visible landscape. The silence that had fallen within the castle walls now seemed to extend outwards, radiating an aura of profound stillness that kept even the bravest travelers at bay. The air around the thicket felt heavy, charged with an unknown ancient power, a silent warning to all who approached. As the years began to accumulate, piling one upon the other like fallen leaves in an autumn forest, the world outside the thorny hedge continued its inexorable march forward. At first, the sudden disappearance of the king, queen, and their beloved Princess Aurora caused immense confusion and sorrow. Messengers sent to the castle never returned, swallowed by the growing, malevolent woods. Scouts and soldiers, dispatched to investigate, found themselves faced with an impossible barrier of thorns, each point as sharp as a dagger, each vine as strong as rope, twined so tightly that not even the smallest animal could squeeze through. Tales of strange disappearances and impenetrable thickets began to spread like wildfire throughout the neighboring villages. The lack of any clear explanation only fueled the fear and wonder. Slowly, inevitably, the initial shock gave way to a somber acceptance. The kingdom mourned its lost rulers, their memory fading into a wistful sorrow over generations. The official narrative, whispered in hushed tones, was that some terrible unknown enchantment had befallen the royal family, spiring them away or trapping them beyond mortal reach. Without a living monarch, the kingdom eventually fell under the rule of distant relatives who cautiously respected the invisible boundary of the ever-growing thorny forest. Content to leave its mysteries undisturbed, the name Aurora, once a symbol of radiant dawn, began to be associated with a different kind of quiet beauty, one veiled in shadow and ancient slumber. As decades turned into centuries, the memory of the original events, Maleficent's curse, the good fairy's alteration, the king's decree, faded into the mists of time, becoming intertwined with myth and folklore. The exact details blurred, softened by countless retellings, embellished by the imaginations of storytellers. The impenetrable forest became known simply as the Sleeping Woods, or the Forest of Thorns, and the hidden castle within it transformed into the Sleeping Castle. The story of a beautiful princess, cursed to sleep for 100 years, began to spread far and wide, whispered from parent to child, sung by bards in faraway inns, carved into the very fabric of the land's oral history. The legend captivated hearts and minds across generations. It spoke of a place frozen in time, a kingdom in eternal repose, awaiting a hero. People spoke of the castle's unimaginable treasures, its opulent halls filled with gold and jewels, but more alluring than any material wealth was the promise of its central mystery, a sleeping beauty, whose radiance was said to transcend time itself. The tale stirred a potent mix of wonder, fear, and desire. Many young men, filled with dreams of glory and spurred by adventurous spirits, attempted to penetrate the thorny fortress. Knights in shining armor, armed with swords and axes, would bravely venture towards the edge of the sleeping woods. They would hack and chop at the living wall, their blades ringing against the enchanted wood. But the thorns were relentless. For every branch they cut, 2 more would immediately sprout, thicker and sharper than before, intertwining with a malevolent speed that defied nature. Many would return, scratched and defeated, their dreams of glory withered. Some, alas, did not return at all, forever lost within the enchanted thicket, their ambition overcome by the magic of the slumbering kingdom. The legend, far from diminishing, only grew stronger with each failed attempt. The older generations would warn the young about the dangers of the sleeping woods, while secretly nurturing a quiet hope that one day the prophecy of true love's kiss would indeed come to pass. The tale became a symbol of enduring hope, of the ultimate triumph of good over evil, of love's power to break the strongest spells. It was a story told under moonlit skies, around crackling hearths, its mystery deepening with every passing year. The image of the sleeping princess, perhaps the most beautiful woman who ever lived, resting peacefully amidst the frozen splendor of her castle, became a powerful archetype, a dream of untouched beauty. Travelers from distant lands, fascinated by the persistent rumors, would make pilgrimages to the edge of the thorny forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary castle. But all they ever saw was an endless green wall of intertwining branches, so dense that it seemed to absorb the very light of the sun. The air around it was always still, always quiet, as if the sleeping kingdom within held its breath. No birds sang there, no rustling leaves broke the silence, only the gentle, almost imperceptible hum of ancient magic. The forest itself became a character in the legend, a guardian, a silent testament to the extraordinary event that had taken place within its depths. As the 100th year began to draw near, a subtle shift occurred. The stories, while still tinged with caution, began to speak more of the coming awakening, a feeling of anticipation slowly weaving its way into the fabric of the folklore. The emphasis moved from the curse itself to the promise of its breaking. The ancient prophecy of true love's kiss, once a distant comfort, now felt like a tangible, approaching reality. The world outside, entirely different from the one Aurora had known, was unknowingly preparing itself for a monumental awakening. The people longed for the end of the long slumber, for the mystery to be unveiled, for the legend to finally come to life. They didn't know when or how it would happen, but the whispers of the sleeping princess and her enchanted castle had become too strong, too real to ignore. The stage was set, the centuries of waiting almost complete, for a hero to rise and fulfill the ancient prophecy. The seasons continued their timeless dance, 100 years passing as swiftly as a gentle breath for those within the sleeping castle. Yet for the world beyond, the thorny hedge, it was an age of profound transformation. Empires had risen and fallen, new cities had been built upon the ashes of old, and the landscape itself had subtly shifted, reshaped by generations of human endeavor and the relentless hand of nature. The tale of the sleeping castle and its enchanted princess, once a vivid rumor, had now matured into a cherished, almost sacred legend, passed down through countless generations. It was a story told with a reverence usually reserved for ancient gods or cosmic events, its details embroidered and softened by the passage of time, yet its core promise of a long sleep and an awakening by true love remained steadfast. In a neighboring kingdom, one that had flourished during the very century the other lay slumbering, a young prince was coming of age. His name was Philip, and he was known throughout his lands for his courage, his chivalry, and a certain restless spirit that yearned for adventure beyond the confines of his royal duties. He was strong of limb, quick of wit, and possessed a heart that beat with honor and compassion. Unlike many young nobles who focused on war games and lavish feasts, Philip had a deeper, more reflective nature. He loved to wander through his kingdom's ancient libraries, poring over dusty scrolls and forgotten maps, listening intently to the stories of traveling bards and seasoned explorers. He harbored a secret yearning for a grand quest, a noble purpose that would transcend the ordinary. It was during one of these quiet evenings, seated by a roaring fire in the great hall, that Prince Philip first heard the legend in earnest. An old, wizened storyteller, his voice raspy with age and rich with the cadence of ancient tales, had captivated the court with stories of valor and magic. As the hour grew late and the flickering firelight cast dancing shadows on the stone walls, the old man leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a particular intensity, and began to speak of the sleeping woods. He described the impenetrable wall of thorns, growing ever taller, ever denser, defying axe and flame. And then, in a hushed, reverent tone, he spoke of the castle hidden within, and the beautiful princess who slept inside, cursed by a wicked fairy to slumber for 100 years, awaiting the kiss of a brave and true prince. The words of the old storyteller wove a potent spell around Philip. He had heard whispers of the tale before, of course, as everyone in the land had, but never with such vivid detail, such a palpable sense of truth. The storyteller painted a picture of Aurora's unmatched beauty, her golden hair, her serene slumber, the entire castle frozen in time around her. He spoke of the countless brave knights who had attempted to breach the thorny barrier, only to fail or be lost forever. He emphasized the sheer impossibility of reaching her, highlighting the challenge, the nearly insurmountable obstacle. But instead of deterring Philip, these warnings only ignited a spark of profound fascination within him. Something about the story resonated deep within Prince Philip's soul. It wasn't just the promise of glory or the thrill of adventure that drew him. It was a profound, almost spiritual connection to the image of the sleeping princess. He felt a strange, inexplicable pull, a sense of destiny stirring within his heart. The idea of a kingdom suspended in time, a beautiful maiden awaiting her awakening, filled him with a longing he couldn't quite articulate. He imagined her face, serene and untouched by the world, dreaming dreams of a love yet unknown. This was more than a mere legend. It felt like a sacred duty, a whisper from fate itself, guiding him towards a fated encounter. From that moment on, the sleeping castle and its enigmatic princess consumed Prince Philip's thoughts. He sought out every scrap of information, every old map, every fragmented chronicle that might shed more light on the legend. He questioned the oldest inhabitants of his kingdom, listened to the hushed tales of shepherds and woodcutters who lived near the edge of the forbidden forest. The more he learned, the more his conviction grew. He knew, with an almost certain intuition, that he was the prince foretold in the prophecy. The timing felt right. The century was drawing to a close, and his heart pounded with a fierce, unwavering resolve. When he finally declared his intention to seek out the sleeping castle and attempt to break the curse, his royal parents were, predictably, filled with alarm. His father, the king, argued fiercely against it, citing the countless failures of past adventurers, the impenetrable nature of the thorny woods, and the very real dangers involved. "Many brave men have tried, my son," he pleaded, his voice heavy with concern, "and none have returned. This is a fool's errand, a death wish born of romantic fantasy." His mother, the queen, wept, fearing for the life of her beloved son. His advisors warned him of the futility of such a quest, emphasizing the sheer impossibility of it. But Prince Philip's resolve was unshaken. He listened patiently to their warnings, acknowledged their fears, but held firm in his belief. "Father, mother," he declared, his voice firm yet gentle, "my heart tells me this is my destiny." The stories speak of a specific time, and that time, I feel, is now. And they speak of a true love's kiss, a power greater than any thorn or spell. If I do not try, I will forever wonder, and my spirit will never find peace. He spoke with such conviction, such quiet passion, that even his skeptical father began to see a flicker of something beyond mere youthful folly in his son's eyes. Philip began to prepare for his journey with meticulous care. He chose his finest steed, a powerful, loyal white horse named Samson, known for his endurance and courage. He donned his sturdiest armor, polished to a gleaming silver, and sharpened his sword to a razor's edge. But he knew that steel and muscle alone would not be enough against magic. He spent hours in prayer and meditation, strengthening his spirit, preparing his heart for whatever trials lay ahead. He believed firmly in the power of good, in the purity of his intentions, and in the strength of the love he hoped to offer. His journey was not merely a physical one, but a spiritual quest, a test of his very soul. As the morning light painted the eastern sky with hues of rose and gold, Prince Philip bade a solemn farewell to his parents and his court. The air was thick with a mixture of fear, hope, and admiration. He mounted Samson, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the dark, looming mass of the sleeping woods could barely be discerned. He carried with him not only his weapons and provisions, but also the hopes and unspoken prayers of generations, a deep-seated desire for the legend to finally, miraculously, come true. With a firm grip on the reins and a heart filled with a blend of trepidation and unwavering courage, he set off towards the ancient, enchanted forest, ready to face the centuries-old curse and awaken the sleeping princess of legend. His journey had begun, a solitary quest towards a destiny woven in dreams and ancient magic. Prince Philip, astride his noble steed Samson, rode steadily towards the ominous silhouette of the sleeping woods. The journey, though long, was filled with a quiet determination. He passed through sun-drenched meadows alongside murmuring rivers and over ancient winding roads, his heart growing steadily more resolute with each passing mile. As he drew closer, the legendary forest loomed larger and darker on the horizon, a vast, undulating wall of green that seemed to swallow the very light of the sun. The air grew cooler, quieter, and a strange, almost tangible stillness began to settle over the landscape. The usual sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an unnerving silence that resonated with the ancient magic rumored to reside within. Finally, he reached the very edge of the thorny wilderness. What had appeared as a dark mass from a distance now revealed itself as an impossibly dense, formidable barrier. Branches thick as oak trunks and covered in thorns sharper than any blade, intertwined so tightly that they formed an impenetrable wall, towering far above Samson's head. The thorns glistened menacingly, some as long as a man's forearm, their tips seeming to pulse with a faint, malevolent energy. It was clear at first glance that this was no ordinary forest, no mere thicket of brambles. This was the legendary enchanted wall the very embodiment of the curse's protective seal. Philip dismounted, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. He approached the thorny barrier cautiously, his keen eyes searching for any weakness, any gap, any sign of a path worn by generations of failed adventurers. There was none. The wall was uniform, solid, and utterly relentless. He tried to push through a seemingly less dense section, testing the strength of the branches, but they recoiled like living things, their thorns scraping against his armor with a harsh, grating sound. He drew his sword, its polished steel glinting, and with a mighty swing, he attempted to hack at a particularly stubborn branch. The blade met the wood with a dull clang, but instead of cutting through, it merely glanced off, leaving only a faint scratch. The branch seemed to vibrate with a silent defiance. And then, as if in answer to his futile effort, another, thicker branch immediately sprouted from its side, intertwining further, strengthening the wall. It was clear that brute force would be useless. Frustration, a feeling alien to his usually calm demeanor, began to prick at Philip's resolve. He spent hours at the edge of the woods, trying different approaches, seeking a way to outsmart the magical barrier. He tried to find a higher point to climb, but the thorns twisted into such a dense canopy that no handhold could be found. He tried to search for a hidden opening at ground level, but the intertwining roots and fallen leaves formed a floor as impenetrable as the wall itself. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long purple shadows, and still, Philip found no way forward. He understood now why so many others had failed, why the legend had persisted for so long. This was a challenge not meant for steel or strength alone. As twilight deepened into night, Philip found a small clearing near the edge of the forest to make camp. He lit a small fire, the crackling flames a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the woods. He sat by the fire, reflecting on the day's failures, but his spirit, though momentarily dampened, refused to be broken. He recalled the storyteller's words, the emphasis on true love's kiss, not just bravery. He realized that the way through this enchanted barrier might not be by force, but by something else entirely, by the very power the curse was destined to yield to. He closed his eyes, his thoughts turning to the sleeping princess, imagining her serene face, feeling that inexplicable pull towards her destiny. He resolved to try again with the morning light, but with a different heart, a different approach. As the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and gold, Philip rose with renewed vigor. He approached the thorny wall once more, but this time he did not draw his sword. He stood before it, his mind cleared of frustration, his heart filled with a quiet sense of purpose and unwavering belief in the legend. He focused not on cutting, but on finding. He walked along the edge, his eyes scanning, not for a gap to force, but for an opening that might reveal itself. And then, as if in response to his earnest, hopeful gaze, something miraculous began to happen. Just as the sun climbed higher, touching the dew-kissed thorns with its golden light, the formidable wall of branches began to stir. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the intertwining vines and branches began to unravel, to separate, to pull back. It was not a violent tearing, but a gentle, almost graceful parting, as if the forest itself was yielding to an unseen force. The thorns, which minutes before had been a menacing barrier, now seemed to curl away, creating a narrow, winding path, just wide enough for a man to pass through. It was as if the magic of the 100 years, the very enchantment that had created the wall, was finally, reluctantly, giving way to the approaching dawn of true love. With a surge of exhilaration and a deep breath, Philip stepped onto the newly formed path. He had to squeeze through some sections, the thorns still brushing against his armor, But they no longer felt malicious. They merely acknowledged his passage. The path wound deeper and deeper into the forest, growing progressively wider until finally, through a final parting of the branches, he saw it, the castle. It stood before him, majestic and grand, yet eerily silent, its grey stone walls covered in a fine layer of ancient dust, its windows dark and still. It was exactly as the legends described, frozen in time, preserved in an otherworldly quiet. He entered through the main gate, which had slowly creaked open as he approached, as if waiting for him. The first thing that struck him was the profound silence. No bird sang, no wind rustled through unseen leaves, no human sound disturbed the air. It was a silence so complete, it felt like a presence. A heavy cloak draped over everything. The courtyards were exactly as they had been 100 years ago. Stable boys stood frozen mid-polish beside motionless horses. Gardeners were caught mid-trim, their shears poised above ancient rose bushes. Dust motes hung suspended in the air, untouched, unmoving. Philip walked through the silent castle, his footsteps echoing unnervingly on the stone floors. He passed through grand halls, where knights stood frozen in mid-conversation, their expressions fixed. He saw ladies of the court, their elegant gowns draped as if in a tableau, caught forever in a gesture of greeting or laughter that would never fully escape their lips. The kitchen was a snapshot of a feast in preparation, a cook leaning over a stove, a servant carrying a platter, all utterly still. He saw the king and queen in their chambers, asleep in a loving embrace. Everywhere he looked, he saw life suspended, a world paused. A sense of awe and profound melancholy washed over him. He was walking through a living museum, a dream made manifest, a testament to the power of ancient magic. His heart, however, remained focused on his ultimate quest, the princess. He knew, with an instinct deeper than any map or whispered direction, that she would be in the highest tower, in a hidden chamber. He ascended a winding staircase, its steps covered in a century of undisturbed dust. The silence deepened with every step, the air growing heavier, until he reached a small, forgotten door at the very top. He pushed it open gently, and there, bathed in a soft, ethereal light filtering through a grimy window, she lay. She was on a simple bed, her form still and serene, her golden hair fanned out around her, shimmering even in the muted light, and her face, so exquisitely beautiful, was utterly peaceful. Her lips were slightly parted, her breath so faint it was almost imperceptible. She was, without a doubt, the Princess Aurora of legend, untouched by time, sleeping deeply, patiently, for 100 long years. A profound calm settled over Philip as he gazed upon her. All the dangers of his journey, all the ancient warnings, all the challenges he had faced melted away. In that moment he knew, with a certainty that resonated through his very soul, that this was his destiny. This was the true love he had journeyed so far to find. Prince Philip stood mesmerized, his gaze fixed upon the sleeping Princess Aurora. The faint light filtering into the dusty chamber seemed to halo her golden hair, and her beautiful face, serene and untouched by the century that had passed, spoke of dreams unburdened. He felt no fear, no doubt, only a profound sense of recognition, a quiet knowing that resonated deep within his soul. This was the destiny he had journeyed for, the dream he had pursued, the true love foretold in ancient whispers. All the challenges he had faced, the impenetrable thorns, the eerie silence of the castle, now seemed trivial, mere tests leading him to this singular, sacred moment. His heart, which had beat with adventure and courage, now pulsed with a gentle reverence, a tenderness he had never known. He moved closer, his footsteps barely disturbing the thick dust on the floor. He knelt beside the bed, his strong features softened by awe and affection. He reached out a hand, hesitating for a moment, then gently brushed a stray strand of golden hair from her forehead. Her skin, pale and luminous, was cool to his touch, a silent testament to her long slumber. He leaned in, his own breath catching in his throat, and with a heart full of hope and a silent prayer, he pressed his lips, softly, tenderly, to hers. It was not a kiss of passion, but one of pure, innocent love, a kiss that carried the weight of 100 years of waiting, a promise of a future untold. The moment Philip's lips touched Aurora's, a surge of pure, benevolent magic, warmer and brighter than any sunbeam, erupted from their connection. It was as if a dormant spring had suddenly burst forth, sending ripples of life through the silent, enchanted realm. Aurora's eyelids fluttered, a soft sigh escaping her lips, a sound that, though faint, echoed like a symphony in the silent room. Her eyes, the color of morning glories, slowly opened, blinking once, twice, adjusting to the dim light. They met Philip's gaze, and in that instant, a flicker of understanding, a spark of recognition, passed between them. A gentle smile, the first she had given in 100 years, bloomed on her face, radiant as the dawn. The curse was broken. And with her awakening, the enchantment that had held the entire castle captive for a century dissolved as if it had never been. The wave of magic born of true love's kiss spread outwards from the hidden chamber with astonishing speed, washing over every corner of the magnificent edifice. In their royal chambers, the king and queen stirred, their eyes opening, their long frozen embrace gently parting. They blinked, looking at each other in mild confusion for a moment, before the memory of their daughter and the terrible curse rushed back. Throughout the castle, life resumed its interrupted course. In the grand ballroom, the musicians' bows scraped across strings, resuming the very note they had left off, a lively tune filling the air once more. The court, previously frozen in their elaborate garments, continued their conversations, mid-sentence, their laughter suddenly echoing through the revitalized halls. In the bustling kitchens, the ladle clattered back into the bubbling pot. The baker's hands resumed kneading the dough, the smell of freshly baked bread and simmering stews wafting through the air. The sentries on the battlements completed their mid-stride, their spears glinting as they once again scanned the horizon. The castle dogs stretched and yawned, resuming their comfortable snores. The stable boys finished polishing their bridles. The horses whinnied softly in their stalls. The clocks, which had been silent for 100 years, began to tick once more, their chimes resounding through the newly awakened halls, marking the return of time. Outside the castle walls, the truly miraculous transformation took place. The formidable, impenetrable thorny forest, which had stood guard for a century, began to wither and recede. The branches, once thick and menacing, slowly curled back, shriveled, and crumbled into dust, revealing the clear blue sky and the green meadows beyond. The path Philip had found, which had previously allowed his passage, now widened into a grand avenue, clear and inviting. The castle, once hidden from the world, now stood proudly revealed, its ancient stones gleaming in the sunlight, vibrant and alive once more. Aurora, now fully awake, rose from the bed, her eyes shining with a newfound clarity. She looked at Philip, a stranger yet profoundly familiar, and her smile deepened. You are the one," she whispered, her voice melodious and soft as the seventh fairy had gifted her. Philip, his heart soaring, gently took her hand. "And you, my princess, are more beautiful than any legend could describe," he replied, his voice filled with admiration and profound relief. As they descended the winding staircase, hand in hand, the sounds of the reawakened castle grew louder, more vibrant. They found the king and queen, their faces filled with bewildered joy, already embracing their long-lost daughter. Tears of happiness flowed freely as the royal family, reunited after a century of silent separation, celebrated the breaking of the curse. The entire court rejoiced, their initial confusion giving way to ecstatic celebration. The storyteller's tales had indeed come true. The news of the awakening spread like wildfire throughout the land. The ancient kingdom, long slumbering, was now alive and vibrant. People flocked to the castle, marveling at the miracle, eager to witness the living legend. Soon after, a magnificent wedding was planned, a celebration fitting for such a momentous occasion. Prince Philip and Princess Aurora were married, their union sealing not just their love, but also the coming together of two kingdoms. They reigned with wisdom and kindness, their lives a testament to the enduring power of true love, a love that could defy time, break the darkest curses, and awaken an entire world to a joyous new beginning. The kingdom prospered under their benevolent rule, and the tale of the Sleeping Beauty, now a story with a happy ending, was told and retold, cherished for generations to come. A reminder that even the deepest sleep can be broken by the purest heart. As the night slowly settles in, and the last whispers of Aurora's awakened kingdom drift softly away, let your own mind begin to drift too. The story of the Sleeping Beauty is a gentle reminder that even in the longest waits, even in the deepest slumber, love and hope are always patiently waiting for their moment to awaken. Allow the peaceful imagery of a kingdom stirred back to life, of love's tender kiss, to settle gently in your thoughts. There's no need to rush, no need to hurry. Just let the quiet magic of the tale soothe your senses, softening the edges of your day. Breathe in slowly, deeply, and as you exhale, feel any lingering worries melt away, just as the thorny forest receded to reveal the castle once more. Remember, even in stillness, great things are preparing to blossom. You are safe, you are warm, and you are cherished. Let the peace of this story carry you into a night of serene and beautiful dreams, a slumber as gentle as Aurora's, yet free from any curses. Rest well, knowing that every story has its perfect ending, and every day brings a fresh, new beginning.